Welcome to the Breakaway sequence. Today I'm joined by Mr. Terrie Lloyd, founder and CEO of Japan Travel KK. Terrie, thank you for being here. Could you please tell us about yourself?
What part?
Let's start with diejob.com. Do you think that it was the market that basically gave you, or you seen the opportunity in the market to create the company, or it was the company itself that influenced the market into this shift from lifetime employment into jumping between companies?
Yeah, okay. Well, just for context for our audience, I started Japan's first online recruiting company, diejob.com. It's still going today. I sold the company in 2005. And so it's been under Japanese management ever since. To answer your question, the idea for DieJob originally came because as a fledgling entrepreneur, I couldn't find staff. And so I was always struggling to find good people, basically. Then I was approached in 1994 by this guy in the States who was doing a new thing called online recruiting. And I remember the conversation with him. I said to him, online recruiting doesn't sound like a very good business because hardly anybody is online. And he said, well, that's true, but here in Japan, along with the States, obviously, where he was from, that the people who are online are engineers, IT engineers, software engineers. And then a light bulb went off for me and I realized that, oh, okay, maybe online recruiting does have an opportunity. So we entered into some negotiations, which unfortunately didn't work out. I wanted to buy a small piece of the company here in Japan. He basically had, ownership issues. And in the end, we separated in 1996, and in 1997, I established this project for creating a website for online recruiting. So the company diejob.com in 1998 got started, and roughly the same time, Masayoshi-san introduced high-speed ADSL internet. Up until then, we used these modems where you put the phone in the modem and it go bzz, 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 and it hardly worked. It used to run at 300 baud, which is bits per second. Oh. So you can't do much with 300 baud, right? Now we're at 10 megabits per second or 100 megabits per second. But anyway, so roughly around that time, Masayoshi-san invested in a company in the States, which allowed you to do high-speed internet over telephone wires. And so by that method, he introduced high-speed internet to Japan. So suddenly all these people were online, and we were the first online recruiter, diejob.com. About a year after us, another company called Japan, which is now a major player in Japan, started their first iteration. And prior to us, Recruit had a university recruiting online operation, but not for general people. Why not for general people? The reason is back then, recruiting was considered a dirty business. Basically, people, when they graduated, went to a company would train them. In return for all the training and mentoring and everything else, they were expected to stay the whole life inside the same company, 35 years. Which would be fine if it was a Sony or an IBM or somebody like that. But if you got a so-called black company, where they work people until 1 in the morning every day, those people...
Like Toyota, right?
I'm not going to name names. Toyota is actually a very good company, especially these days. But back then, there were a lot of really black companies. So those people were stuck, and they had no options. So what DieJob did, the name is a play on both big job, die, and job, but also in Japanese, it sounds very similar to daijobu. And daijobu means it's okay, meaning it's okay to do tenshoku or to change careers. So anyway, I launched it, and within about 9 months, we had 160,000 bilingual resumes. 160,000.
Was there also demand from the companies?
Well, everyone who was a foreign-owned company was struggling to find bilingual people. So suddenly somebody with 160,000 bilingual resumes was like a eureka moment. And certainly that caused a flood of companies to start working with DaiJob. So it was a eureka moment. It was a paradigm shift, and my competitors were very quick to recognize that something had changed, and they jumped on the bandwagon. And so today, I mean, obviously that was in 1998. So today, 8 years later, there's thousands. At least there's 1,000 online recruiters. Maybe every recruiter is online, but the ones that have job boards. So I like to think that I caused a demographic shift, whereas 28 years ago, one job for 35 years. Now the average Japanese age 30 has already switched jobs 2.5 times. So that's a huge socioeconomic difference. And in particular, it's helped women. So young women now have the ability to be able to move to better and better jobs, improve their salaries and that sort of thing.
Was it even more difficult for women back then?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a very paternalistic society. And so for women to suddenly have earning power means they can put off getting married until they're ready. And now, of course, that's segued into another social problem, which is that the women often are earning more than the husbands are, and so it's hard for them to find a husband that they feel, is worth marrying. But that's another problem, and I'm not involved in that. I'm not, sort of trying to solve that problem. That's for somebody else to do. So yeah, so that's how I got started with DaiJob, and recruiting is central to every single company. There isn't a company that doesn't need people, even though we hear about AI and so on. And in fact, I did come across a friend of mine just a few days ago who's running an entire company almost by himself. There are people like that, but that's the rare 0.001%.
Like an exception.
Yes, most of us need people to magnify and expand our abilities and to build a proper business.
But still, don't you think that many jobs would eventually be replaced by artificial intelligence or LLMs?
This is not the first time that the human race has had a paradigm shift.
You mean the Industrial Revolution?
The Industrial Revolution, before that gunpowder. There are many inventions throughout history that have made people more efficient. But collectively, the objective of the human race is to self-perpetuate. So if people are not eating and surviving, what are they doing? They're revolting and fighting, right? So I don't think we're going to have the Elon Musk view of the future where nobody works. Everyone will work because that is the nature of humans. But what kind of work they'll be doing may be different to what they were doing previously. So, referring to the Industrial Revolution, clearly before the Industrial Revolution, everybody was involved in growing food, right?
Right.
And the people who had the power were the people who owned the land. And if you go back far enough, the people who had the money were not only the people who owned the land, but who were also ordained by religion or by tradition to be the bosses, right? And then after the Industrial Revolution, or roughly the same time, we also had democracy, which was another invention of human beings. So the Industrial Revolution caused people to be able to work year-round, not just during season, and also created a whole new industry, which is pharmaceuticals and medicine, because before that people were either healthy or they died quickly, and then suddenly they're malingering in factories. So, if we move forward, we can see these paradigm shifts happening over and over again. But if you think about each segue, each change, it's almost always been, not a situation where people become redundant. They just simply find something new to do. And for AI, I think the exact same thing is happening. So right now in AI, the situation is that we've got all these kids in university who have been learning AI and software development, only to find out that even as they're doing their 4-year degrees, that AI has made them redundant. So my company's run a number of intern channels. And over the last 6 months, the number of interns who are AI and software background people has dramatically increased.
Now we are talking about Japan Travel, right?
Japan Travel
Referring
and
to
also
company.
Akiya 2.0, right. And why is that? And I think the main reason is because those people are suddenly being told it's going to be hard for you to get a job. So whereas they might have been hired directly into a company as a fresh graduate, now they actually have to get experience and be able to sell themselves in a highly competitive market. So for the next couple of years at least, I feel kind of sorry for those young kids who are graduating, because they spent most of them 4 years, and some of them they might have masters or PhDs, so it could be 10 years or more, and then suddenly they're redundant, right? But I don't think that's the end of their lives, and I don't think that's the end of STEM as an opportunity. It's just, what's the next level? What are we going to use AI for? How are we going to use it? And keeping in mind that we'll always need toilet paper, we'll always need food, we'll always need people, places for people to live, and people being the, bones in a brain, basically need to travel and explore and have entertainment and these kinds of things. So, as much as AI is going to make certain sectors more efficient, what they'll be doing is much the same as what we've been doing so far.
From what you just said, can we basically draw the conclusion that your industry, Japan Travel's industry, is kind of future-proof in this case?
Yeah, well, so travel, so now getting into the weeds a little bit. Travel is not the ideal application for AI. I mean, it would be if it worked, but it doesn't work. So that's why it's not ideal. Right now, AI, where it's at, is best at pattern recognition. I mean, that's what it is. It's an averaging tool for working out statistic probabilities, right?
Right.
So if you look at a photo and you've seen enough photos, you can sort of guess what's in the photo, right? And all it's really doing is probabilistically going through a ton of data and looking for similar images with similar shapes and forms and densities of color and so on. In the travel sector, there is a dearth of reliable information. I mean, for AI to work properly, you need to have, and for it to be useful, you need to have a data stack, and you need to have that data stack to be accessible in real time, preferably, right?
Right.
So let's say, for example, you're trying to book a trip to Japan. What things can you do online with an API today?
Book a flight, book a hotel.
You can book a flight, you can book a hotel, and you can book a car.
Right.
And maybe in some places you can book a meal.
Or a tour.
Well, yeah, so the tours that you are booking are either package tours,
right,
which have existed long before AI, and you don't need AI for that, or they're activities, which are 3 hours or 4 hours, right? And again, you don't need AI for that. AI will give you some basic structure. But what AI doesn't do, because it doesn't know how, is to, for example, fill in the gaps. So let's take some examples. You need to get from Kyoto to Hida, for example, which is up in the mountains. You can take a bus, you can take a train, you can take a cab, or you can rent a car. But all of those things require you to imagine who is providing that service, and furthermore, who you could actually rely on, and furthermore, they speak English, right? So there are these hurdles that are very human hurdles that stop that data stack from being accessed, or there is no data stack. There is a service, but they haven't digitized it. So to give you a case in point, most of Japan is connected by buses. Although as tourists, we think about trains and so on. As soon as you try to do something different, you need a bus, basically. Or you need to pay for a rental car or something. So all of the bus routes in Japan were only unified about 7 or 8 years ago. And they were done through a company called Jordan. Now that same company was the company that originally unified all the train timetables. And so when Google brought out Google Maps, and then they started offering transportation planning and that kind of thing, they were getting their data from those types of companies. So AI is like a Google, right? They feed, they're a meta data company that feeds off other people's data stacks. And if there is no data stack, there's a gap. You can't address it. So even another example is JR, right? JR, Japan Rail, the main vendor of railway services around the country, only made individual Shinkansen trips bookable online in an accessible language, English, about 6 months ago.
6 months ago.
6 months ago. Prior to that, if you wanted to book on JR, you either went through Navitime, who launched their service about 18 months ago, or you bought a JR Rail Pass, in which case there was no intelligence involved. There was just a ticket, and you could get on and off a train whenever you felt like it. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there are all these gaps that occur. Now, if you're doing a mainstream trip and you're going to Kyoto and Hiroshima and Tokyo and Osaka, you don't actually even need AI to find an itinerary for that. You can just type into Google SEO, I want to do this trip, and probably somebody somewhere on Reddit or wherever has already surfaced a trip like that. You just pick it up and use it, right? You don't need AI for that. AI is supposed to be able to help you connect everything together. That's where it will truly become useful. I should be able to say to AI, okay, on July the 23rd, I'm going to arrive in Tokyo for 7 days. I want to wind up in Osaka, and I want to do these things, find me these things, and then help me book them. You can't do that today. You can get parts of it. And then, so these various platforms that are, and for that matter, ChatGPT and Claude, they're able to put together an itinerary. They're able to estimate how long you'd be in each place. But they can't do the bookings for you because there is no specific data addressing that booking. The reason they found that location is because somebody wrote about it,
right?
Not because it's available commercially from a data stack that is bookable, right? So there's a gap still. And until those smaller businesses start to become digitized, or until somebody picks up a sector and digitizes the whole sector, it's not available to AI to be able to do what you would need AI to do.
You use the word still, so it's a temporary issue that is going to be fixed soon?
I think that it will take at least 5 to 10 years for Japan to be able to give you a genuinely customized tour. Okay, now that's a genuinely customized tour for a product that already exists. So how am I dealing with the AI revolution and the perceived competition? Well, first of all, I look after customers who want to be looked after by a human. And I don't know about you, but whenever you buy from an automated service and you have a problem, it's extremely painful trying to get some sense out of that organization to be able to undo something that got messed up, whatever it might happen to be. So that's a time when people really want a human, because humans can make value judgments that AI as yet can't do. AI is just a bunch of case logic, basically. So, so that's one thing. And then furthermore, what about the experiences that don't exist? Right? So I'll give you an example. My company launched the pottery tour, and we looked at pottery tours online, and all we could find is 4-hour visits to potteries, possibly an opportunity to spend time with one potter, possibly, but it's kid stuff, just play stuff, and none of those potters are artists. They're all basically commodity brokers, essentially. So we came up with a program where we visited master potters in 4 locations, and then offered the guests who wanted to join those pottery tours to get their hands dirty with a master. Right? You cannot buy that kind of tour as a commodity. Somebody has to go out and actually set it up for you. I have some other tours which are targeted at vegans. In Japan, which is a fish-focused nation, there's almost nothing vegan unless you specifically require it up front. I mean, okay, yeah, there's shojin ryori, and that's great, but you can only eat so much of shojin ryori because the way it's presented is quite rich. So after 2 or 3 days of that, you start feeling sick, I think. So anyway, the point being that to do these vegan tours, we had to ship chefs in. We had to specifically negotiate with restaurants that we've got these unique customers coming in. We don't want any dashi, no dashi, which is fish-based, right? No bonito dashi. So they all have to use wakame, for example. Well, somebody literally has to intervene to get involved in that. I doubt very much that AI is ever going to have a human-to-human relationship to the point where it can replace somebody who's negotiating that kind of tour. Okay, so, that's on the product side. Then, as I said before, humans want humans for certain things, especially when they're in trouble. So there's plenty of opportunity for us to provide services where the person is disabled, they're a larger group, and so there's some, particular issues around some people wanting one thing and some people wanting another thing. That's something AI doesn't handle well. For example, special needs, like they're older, they're in a wheelchair or something like that. Not enough volume for somebody to make a data stack to service it because it's too unique. Sports groups, maybe they need to have a relationship with local sports teams so they can play games with them. University visits. I mean, there's just a wide range of the sector which isn't going to be AI-fied anytime soon. And roughly it's about 30% of the sector. So right now, tourism is probably the world's largest industry. And I don't know how many trillions that makes it, but it's pretty large. Certainly in Japan, it's the second largest industry. But about 30% of that is still not serviced by automation. And whether we're talking about AI or we're just talking about OTAs, because after all, before AI, there were OTAs, right?
Right.
It's the same thing, right? I mean, everyone said, oh, OTAs will kill the travel industry. But actually, that's not what happened at all. It just differentiated it, and people who want humans don't use OTAs. And much the same, they're not going to use OTAs, they'll use AI.
But then OTAs made it a little, or maybe not a little, harder for businesses to make money, basically, from what they do. So,
well, they change what they do. If you try to do the same thing, yes, you will lose, because automation will always win, right? But if you change what you do, then basically the company will evolve. And frankly, it makes for a better working environment for the staff who are in that company, as long as the leadership of the company have the vision to change as is required.
Japan is quite a conformist society, and you once said that this is actually the thing that gives an opportunity for entrepreneurship in Japan. Could you please explain this statement, because it sounds a little counterintuitive. Generally, conformist societies are considered very conservative and unwelcoming for entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So Japanese have their own cultural veneer, right? And in some cases very deep. So we can't ignore the cultural preferences of the nation. But deep down, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you're probably familiar with, but at the base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is physiological needs, which means the need to eat. So even though Japanese are foreigner and foreign idea resistant, hence the Galapagos phenomenon, nonetheless, if they have to eat, and they will accept foreign influence. So Japanese people are really stubborn, and especially older Japanese men are often locked into this feudal mindset that they adopted or were trained in, and are still trained in through the sports teams, sometimes through the schooling, particularly when they enter a company, a larger company, and they're somewhat brutalized. They're forced to do things that they don't want to do, and they have to follow tradition.
And they accept it, kind of, right?
If they want to be part of that particular entity, the sports team or the large successful company, yes, they have to conform. So they lose their independence of thinking and they become conformist. That's coupled with ageist promotion, right? So in Japan, generally speaking, because originally it was it has a lot of Confucian influence, older people are revered. They're supposed to be wiser and they're supposed to know what they're doing. So therefore, as a person ages through a company, their salary goes up, right? Now, of course, things are changing in the technology sector and other skill-based sectors, particularly knowledge-based sectors. In order to stay competitive internationally, you get people who have PhDs who are getting paid way more than somebody who's older than them. But generally speaking, I would say probably still 70 or 80% of Japanese companies still have seniority system.
So basically seniority based on age, right?
Based on age, which means that everyone below them has to conform to whatever that value system is for that senior person. And if the senior person's value system, as it often is to see people working hard and staying late hours to show their commitment, and that's how they promote, then that's a reality for the people who are in that company, right? So, of course, there is now a change going on where knowledge is more powerful than seniority. And so, therefore, in software companies, that paradigm doesn't necessarily exist anymore. But interestingly, in Japanese large IT companies, which have software, it still does exist. For example, Fujitsu, NEC, those types of companies. And they're still seniority oriented, even though they need knowledge workers. So they're having a big problem trying to decide exactly how to fit these knowledge people into a seniority framework, right? And people who can't deal with that, they leave and they wind up at Google or some foreign company, which is also doing equally well here in Japan. So getting back to the point, which is how to take advantage of conformism as a foreign entrepreneur. the opportunity is to understand where the walls are being breached. And the walls are being breached competitively through technology. That's pretty obvious. So as an example, Chinese electric car makers may steal the largest industry that Japan has ever had away from it, because Japanese companies somehow think that they don't need EVs, right? You may know that Toyota is trying to convince the world that hybrids are the way to go. And right now, Toyota is making tons of money out of hybrids because they're a major player. But even as they're doing that, the rest of the world is moving straight to battery electrics. And the reason is because, well, solid-state batteries. And once you have solid-state battery, then basically technologically, economically, and physically, you have a solution which is easily equal to an internal combustion engine. And way less parts, way less maintenance. The Japanese companies are still ignoring that to their peril. And the big question at the moment is whether they can catch up again. Anyway, that's an opportunity, right? And so for every Toyota or Honda or whatever, there are a myriad of suppliers, and some of those suppliers are software companies, and some of those software companies are using foreign PhDs and foreign software engineers because they can't find people locally who have that capability.
So basically what you are saying is that the fact that people generally are resistant to change makes foreigners who are kind of more used to changing and evolving and innovating having an initial advantage because they just
That's correct.
think different and act different.
Yeah, I can think of numerous cases where that was the case. Well, Dijob obviously was one such instance. So, where are the opportunities in Japan right at the moment for foreign entrepreneurs? Well, it's going to be tech, but it doesn't have to be tech for tech's sake. It doesn't have to be software for software's sake. I mean, it could be software within a sector, right? Like pharmaceuticals or semiconductors or something else. So Japanese smaller companies are generally more accepting of tech, and they're more willing to change because that's the only thing they have as an advantage over the big guys. The big guys have the government relations, they have the money, they have the depth of workforce, they have the sales force, they have a global footprint. So the little guys, in order to be able to compete with the big guys, they need plus alpha. And that plus alpha is going to be new tech, a new patent, a new process, a new product. Let's not forget also that Japan, from a business point of view, is two worlds. There's the B2B world and there's the B2C world. And the B2B world, that's the world where people who are not willing to take risk is the most influential and is the most difficult space to get into. The B2C world, on the other hand, Japanese consumers are like consumers anywhere else in the world. They like new, shiny, interesting, useful, functional stuff. And you do not need to fight against conformity in order to be able to sell to consumers. You just need something new that they would like. Now, do you need to understand their mindset? Absolutely, right? Otherwise, you're not predicting where the consumer is going to go. But that's not a function of conformity per se. So there are lots of early adopters in this country who will buy stuff that you would never think would do well in Japan. On the B2B side, that's not the case. On the B2B side, everything is led by the customer's requirement. And usually they think after the fact, whereas consumers are willing to explore and discover.
Terrie, you built 18 companies throughout your career. What would be your advice to young entrepreneurs, specifically coming to Japan without much connections in here, without probably much knowledge of local market? what would be the first thing, and maybe also the second, the third thing to do here?
Yeah, well, it depends whether the young entrepreneur is servicing the Japan market or serving the global market. Recently, because of remote working capability, there are a lot of people here in Japan who actually don't service the Japanese market at all. They're servicing somewhere else, and they're enjoying the Japanese lifestyle. From my point of view, if you can establish a business abroad and then enjoy the Japanese lifestyle, that's like the best of both worlds, right? So then you don't have to worry about learning what Japanese prefer at all. You just need to learn over time how to adapt and integrate into Japanese society. On the other hand, if you're very focused on the Japan market, you want to sell something into the Japan market, absolute number one thing you need to do is understand how Japanese people think. And the best way to do that is to integrate.
To learn the language?
Full immersion. So learn the language, get to make friends who are Japanese, and watch and learn how they think and how they deal with things. It won't take long for most people, for intelligent people who apply themselves to language. The fastest I've ever seen anyone learn Japanese to a high level of fluency is 18 months.
18 months.
18 months. But that is like full on morning, day and night.
And this is still quite a significant time for other languages?
Well, it is. It is. But, and then you've got somebody like me who's, for years was barely functional in Japanese. So how did I survive? I very quickly learned to work through other people. So I very quickly learned that I had to come up with a business idea that was profitable enough I could afford to pay for my weakness, which was not being able to do sales to Japanese people. So I would hire a salesperson who could handle that from a language point of view. So like it or not, my approach has been people-centric versus these days, a lot of people are tools-centric. And so they need people less. I would say that learning Japanese is really a great investment if you love Japan. Don't do it like me, because it takes 10, 20 years to get to the same point that you might be 2 or 3 years in if you had Japanese capability.
Let's imagine this case. I want to start a company that provides electrical engineering services. And I'm based in Europe, but let's say I fall in love with a Japanese girl and I move to Japan. I can't really serve European companies while being in Japan. So I want to focus on Japanese market, but it's entirely B2B. So how would you suggest approaching that?
Yeah, well, that's a great use case. And actually, more than a few of us have come here because we've met partners abroad. Although I met both my wife and my first wife and second wife here in Japan. Language is number one. So what I would do initially is go to a language school for a minimum of 6 to 12 months. 6 to 12 months for the average intelligent person will get them to N3, N2. 6 months to N3, 12 months to N2. And N2 is functionally the minimum required to go work in a Japanese company. Now, you mentioned electrical engineering. I assume you have a degree. That person has a degree in electrical engineering and probably has some work experience. So then I would start identifying, as I'm learning the language, I would start identifying which companies are in that sector, and I would profile those companies. You might ask yourself, how many energy operators in Japan are not Japanese? And in fact, there are some. So I have a friend who is Swiss-German who manages a geothermal company here. So you'll be surprised what's here once you start looking. Now, that geothermal company is not going to hire you straight away,
right?
But it allows you to profile what kind of company it is and what they're trying to do. And like as not, in that very specialized field, they have a lack of bilingual people, especially on the technical side. So I would go talk to the person managing that company, who might be Japanese or might be a non-Japanese, and then get help from them to understand what kind of people they need in the future. And then if it turns out that they're open to an internship, I would do an internship. So I know it's difficult because you just spent a year paying the school to teach you Japanese, and now you don't have much money left. And now suddenly you're doing an internship, which like as not, you're not going to get paid for. So how do you do that? Well, you may have to take 1 or 2 years off in between where you're doing something that isn't aligned with your technology degree, just in order to be able to build up a financial base. And if you have language skills, well, then you could get involved in general software, for example, or you could get involved in recruiting, or some other work area, which maybe the recruiting is for engineers, for example. And so then you start to learn the engineering sector and the demand in the engineering sector. But anyway, you've made your mind up that you want to work for this particular geothermal company. Then you just simply make sure that by the time you're ready to apply, you match the needs that they have. Keeping in mind that companies evolve, right? So at the start, they might just focus on a bilingual engineer. But as they go along, maybe they took over a couple of Japanese companies and now they've got plant and they need to be able to maintain the plant. So now suddenly they need electrical maintenance engineers, or they need people to be able to take maintenance software or maintenance technology or management technology and then apply it to the local plant. So they need a project manager or a product manager. So when you're looking at this company, when you get to know the company, you need to sort of anticipate where they're building and what kind of people they're going to need. But I can tell you that having language is probably the single most useful skill as a non-Japanese in Japan to get jobs in the Japanese context, whether or not it's for a foreign company or for a Japanese company. It might take you 4 years, 5 years, but then you love the country and you want to build a future here, it's worth the investment.
Terrie, thank you for your time. Thank you for this amazing conversation. I think we could have talked for another 4 hours. I hope we could do another interview maybe sometime in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure.